My dad told me my college fund was gone 2 weeks before my high school graduation. He didn't look ashamed. He didn't look nervous. He just said it like it was a scheduling change. We had to use it, he said. It was the right thing to do. I was 17, and I had already been accepted to the University of Michigan. If you've ever had something promised to you your entire childhood, and then watched it disappear in one conversation, you know the feeling. My name is Lauren Mitchell. My parents divorced when I was 9. By the time I was 11, my dad had remarried. Karen came with a son, Evan. He was 3 years older than me. Loud, charming, always in trouble but somehow never blamed. From the beginning, my dad treated him like a second chance. He treated me like a responsibility. Growing up, I was told one thing consistently: don't worry about college, it's handled. My dad loved saying that. It's taken care of. I started saving when you were born. I believed him. I studied hard. Didn't apply for many scholarships because, why would I? The fund was handled. My mom didn't have much money. She worked as a dental assistant and barely covered rent, but she trusted him on this. Your dad's good with money, she would say. He was, just not with mine. Evan struggled in school. Bad grades, suspensions, a failed senior year. When he finally got into a small private college in Arizona, it wasn't because of merit. It was because Karen insisted he needed structure. Tuition was almost triple what mine would have been. I didn't connect the dots. Not until that night in May. We were sitting at the kitchen island. Karen was unusually quiet. Evan wasn't there, already off at some graduation party. My dad folded his hands like he was about to give a performance review. Lauren, things changed. What things? He sighed. We had to reallocate the college fund. Reallocate, not spent. Not used. Reallocate. For what? I asked. For Evan's tuition. He needed it more urgently. I laughed, not because it was funny, because my brain refused to process it. What do you mean he needed it more urgently? He was starting sooner. I start in 3 months. Karen finally spoke. You're smart. You'll figure it out. Figure it out. With what? How much was in it? I asked. My dad hesitated. About $82,000. My ears rang. $82,000. Gone. You gave him my college fund. It wasn't just yours, Karen snapped. We're a family. Funny, because when it came to curfews and chores, we weren't equal. But when it came to money, suddenly we were united. I've been telling colleges I'm covered, I said quietly. Well, now you'll need loans, my dad replied. It builds character. I'll never forget that sentence. Because Evan didn't need character, he needed rescue. And my dad chose him. I didn't scream. I didn't cry in front of them. I went to my room and called my mom. She was silent for a long time. Then she said, we'll figure it out. We, not him. I took out loans. All of them. Federal, private, high interest. I worked 30 hours a week in college, graduated with honors and $96,000 in debt. Evan dropped out after 2 years. No degree, no repayment, just finding himself. For years, I kept contact with my dad, polite and minimal. Birthdays, Christmas, short calls. He never brought up the fund again. Like it had evaporated, like it hadn't reshaped my entire adult life. I built my career the slow way. Entry-level marketing job in Chicago, tiny apartment, no help, no safety net. By 30, I was making 6 figures. By 32, I had finally paid off my student loans. The last payment felt like oxygen. I celebrated alone, because the person who should have helped me carry that weight was the one who created it. Then, last fall, my dad called. Not for my birthday, not for a holiday. He sounded different, smaller. I need to talk to you about something important. I knew. You always know. Evan had started a business. It failed. Karen had health issues. Medical bills were piling up, and my dad had limited liquidity. Limited liquidity. The same man who once told me loans build character. Now he needed help. Lauren, he said carefully, we were hoping you could lend us $40,000. Lend, not ask. Lend. I sat in my kitchen staring at the skyline. $40,000. Almost exactly half of what he gave away. And suddenly, I realized something. He didn't think he had wronged me. He thought this was normal. That families redistribute resources, that I would figure it out. Again. That night, I opened a folder on my laptop, a folder I had kept for 15 years. Bank statements, emails, old college financial aid documents. The numbers were still there, clear, undeniable. If he wanted to talk about money, we were going to talk about all of it. I didn't answer him that night. I told him I needed time to review my finances. The irony wasn't lost on me. For years I had reviewed my finances around the hole he created. Now he was waiting on my decision. 2 days later I drove back to Ohio. Same house, same kitchen island, same polished granite where my future had been quietly reassigned. Karen looked thinner, older. Evan wasn't there. Convenient. My dad poured coffee like this was a casual visit. "So," he said, clearing his throat, "did you think about it?" "I did," I replied. I opened my bag and pulled out a thin folder. He frowned slightly. "What's that?" "Numbers." I laid everything out on the counter. Original college savings estimate, $82,000. My total student loan debt at graduation, $96,214. Interest paid over 14 years, $38,611. Total cost of building character, $134,825. Karen blinked. My dad shifted in his seat. "I don't see what that has to do with." "It has everything to do with it," I said calmly. "You're asking me for $40,000, but what you actually did was transfer $134,000 of financial burden onto me." "That's dramatic," Karen snapped. "No," I said. "It's math." My dad rubbed his temples. "That money went to your brother." "Stepbrother," I corrected gently. Silence. "You're still holding on to that?" he asked. "I'm holding on to the consequences." He leaned back. "You turned out fine. That one almost made me laugh. Fine. Like resilience erases injustice." "You know what's interesting?" I continued. "You told me loans build character, so by that logic, maybe this is building yours." Karen's mouth tightened. "That's cruel." "No," I said. "Cruel is telling your daughter 2 weeks before graduation that her future was reallocated." The word hung there again. Reallocated. He looked tired now. "This isn't about the past. We're struggling." "I understand that," I said. "But I need to understand something first." He looked at me cautiously. "If I hadn't paid off my loans, would you still be calling?" That hit. Because we both knew the answer. He didn't apologize. Not really. He said things like, "We did what we thought was best at the time. Evan needed direction. You were always independent." There it was again. Independent. Translation, disposable. "So here's what I'm willing to do," I said. They both straightened. "I will not give you $40,000. Karen inhaled sharply. "But," I continued, "I'm willing to offer a structured loan agreement." My dad frowned. "A what?" "A legal contract. Interest at market rate, collateral required." Karen stared at me like I'd slapped her. "You're treating us like strangers." "No," I said quietly. "I'm treating you like you treated me." Silence. Heavy. Uncomfortable. Real. "I'm your father," he said finally. "And I was your daughter," I replied. That was the first time his eyes dropped. Not in anger. In recognition. "I trusted you with my future," I continued. "You made a unilateral decision that cost me 14 years of financial stress. I'm not punishing you. I'm protecting myself." Karen stood up abruptly. "This is unbelievable." "No," I said. "What was unbelievable was watching my stepbrother drop out of college after my fund paid for it." That one landed hard. We sat there for a long time. Finally, my dad asked quietly, "What if we can't qualify for collateral?" "Then I can't qualify you for the loan." He looked at me differently then, not as a child, not as an obligation, but as someone who had learned something he hadn't expected her to learn. Boundaries. "I didn't think you'd bring all this up," he admitted. "I didn't think you would ask me for money," I replied. Fair. In the end, he didn't take the deal. Pride wouldn't let him. Or maybe reality did. We finished our coffee in silence. As I stood to leave, he said, "You really kept all those records?" "Yes." "Why?" I paused at the doorway. "Because I needed proof that it happened. Not for court, not for revenge, for myself." Driving home, I didn't feel victorious. I felt steady. For the first time, the power dynamic had shifted, not because I had more money, but because I wasn't afraid to name the truth. A week later, he texted, "We're figuring something else out. No need to worry." I didn't ask what that meant. For years, I had figured things out. Now it was his turn. People think revenge is loud. It isn't. Sometimes it's just saying no and meaning it. 3 months passed after that conversation. No dramatic fallout. No angry messages. Just distance. The quiet kind that isn't accidental. I heard through my mom that my dad had taken out a home equity loan. Apparently, the bank offered reasonable terms. Interesting. Because when I needed terms at 18, the lesson was character. Now it was interest rates. In January, Evan called me for the first time in years. Not a group text, not a holiday emoji, an actual call. I heard about the meeting, he said. Of course he did. Small towns don't keep secrets. Families keep narratives. And, I asked, he said you wouldn't help. I offered a contract. He exhaled. Lauren, I didn't ask him to use your college fund. I believed him. That was the complicated part. I know, I said, but I didn't stop it either. There it was, the part nobody says out loud. We met for coffee the next weekend. He looked older than I expected, less entitled, more worn down. I dropped out because I didn't want to be there, he admitted. I just didn't want to disappoint Mom. And Dad? He laughed once. He wasn't my dad like that. He was trying to prove something. I thought about that. Maybe the fund hadn't just been about Evan. Maybe it had been about my father wanting to be the hero in someone else's story. I just happened to be the cost. Do you hate me? Evan asked. No, I said honestly. I resented the system, not you. He nodded slowly. I'm paying them back, he added quietly. That surprised me. Little by little, I should have done it years ago. I didn't respond right away, because accountability sounds different when it's not defensive. A month later, my dad asked to meet again. Public place this time, a diner halfway between our houses. He looked smaller, not physically, just stripped of certainty. I've been thinking, he said. That's new, I replied gently. He almost smiled. I handled that wrong, back then. It wasn't a sweeping apology, it wasn't poetic, but it was the first time he'd said wrong instead of necessary. I thought you'd be fine, he continued. You always were. That doesn't mean I should have had to be, I said. He nodded. I know. Then he did something I didn't expect. He slid an envelope across the table. Inside was a cashier's check. $20,000. It's not everything, he said, but it's something. I stared at it. I didn't need the money anymore. That wasn't the point. Where did this come from? I asked. I sold the boat. The boat he bought the year after my college fund disappeared. The boat I'd seen in family Christmas photos. The boat that symbolized we're doing fine. I let out a slow breath. You didn't have to do that. Yes, he said quietly. I did. I didn't deposit the check right away. I sat with it for a week because the money wasn't reimbursement. It was acknowledgement. And acknowledgement changes things, not perfectly. Not magically, but enough. In the spring, I bought my first condo. No cosigner, no assistance, no redistribution. At the closing, as I signed the final document, I thought about 18-year-old me. Terrified, scrambling, pretending it didn't hurt. I wish I could tell her something simple. You weren't overlooked because you were weak. You were overlooked because you were strong. And some people mistake strength for permission. My relationship with my dad isn't fixed. It's different, more honest, less myth. He doesn't call me independent like it's a compliment anymore. He calls me capable. That's closer to the truth. Last week, he sent me a photo. Evan. Working construction. Hard hat, sunburned, smiling. Building character, my dad wrote. I stared at the message for a long moment, then I replied, looks good on him. And for the first time in a long time, it didn't feel bitter. It felt balanced.